How is everybody doing? And welcome back for another Strength Chat episode. Today, I have got a very special guest for you all. Known for being the namesake of the JM Press, he's broken multiple world records, also holding multiple degrees in strength and conditioning and physiology. Today, I am joined by the one and only JM Blakley. How are you doing?
Good, good. Every day that I get an opportunity to express my ideas or express myself physically in my own world, it's a good day.
Awesome. And how are you? What's been? I know obviously we were chatting a little bit before we started recording, but how are you? What's been happening in your world recently?
Uh, well, in my world is remarkably small on purpose. I uh, I have chosen to limit the scope of my interest and go deeper into it. So right now, my physical capacity because of arthritis is diminished. So I'm not spending as much time physically active myself. Um, so for me, I spend a lot of time reading and um, I call it head work, just sitting and thinking about what I've read and problems like that. And then I spend some time in meditation, and I have lots of time to do such. Um, so that's my own personal world, and then my professional world is I train a couple people. I have a few left in person, and then I train quite a few over the video.
Yeah.
And so I'm engaged in other people's struggles more than I'm engaged in any struggles of my own.
Wow.
My only struggle is really just the arthritis and finding a way to deal with losing the capacity that I once had
Yeah, yeah,
and how to cope with that. And that's a very good that's something that most athletes don't see coming, even though they know it's coming.
yeah,
Every athlete knows that their career can't last forever. It doesn't just keep going up. At some point, it's like a roof. It goes up and up and up, and then it goes. It's on. You're on the other side of the roof, and eventually you get to the edge of that roof, and you can't do your thing anymore at all. Not only is it declining, and you're not quite as good as you once were, you can't even do that thing anymore. And we all know this is coming. And one way to sort of fold into that smoothly is to coach. And a lot of athletes will do that, but not every top athlete has a coach's heart, the service heart, the teacher's heart. And so it's hard. Luckily I can do that. And so I'm still involved. I have a couple people doing meets next weekend, even
nice.
around just everywhere, around all over America. And I can be involved to some degree, um, less than I'd like to, but a little bit, and that that keeps the ball rolling. Even though my career and my physical capabilities have fallen off to a remarkable extent, I can still help other people with their physical struggles, their emotional struggles, their mental struggles, and because I train the whole athlete. I train the body, train the physical, I train the mental. Because if you there's lots of strong people that have a weak mind and they're easy to beat. So that's not good enough just to have a strong body. You have to have a strong mind to run that strong body. And then I go a step further, and I believe that uh, having a strong emotional core, spiritual core, if you want to, but just easy to explain emotional core. It's that feeling inside that drives the mind, that drives the body. I see it as a unit. You you can focus on just one if you'd like, but I don't. I focus on all of it, and I treat people the whole way around. So that's what's going on, sort of, in my world.
Nice. And I suppose, touch on that a little bit in the three areas that you mentioned, they all have a contributing factor to each other. And I know I did a little bit of a brief introduction there. And, obviously you mentioned about, your own competing career, if you like, and now you're coaching. But for anyone listening who doesn't know your background, just want to give a little bit of a background to yourself in terms of, your own competing and then, getting involved in coaching.
Yeah, sure. I'm not very interested in me anymore. I used to be. So when I competed, I was fortunate enough to be able to compete against the best in the world. I was in that group of the best of the best, and so I got that opportunity to understand how important it is to utilize all of those things, the body, the mind, and the spirit. Because if you can't put something together as a whole, you're not going to last too long on that stage. So that was my competitive career, and I set some records, and those things were good. And then I had a fortune. I was very fortunate, extremely lucky, and blessed, if that's a word that we could use here, but just extra fortunate beyond good luck, almost as if somebody was looking out for me. Uh, with my education, I got all my education paid for. I didn't pay a dime for it. Master's, PhD stuff that all in exercise physiology and strength and athletic conditioning. So every day I would learn something, and then I would be able to apply it. And every new thing that I learned added to my overall understanding of what it takes to perform at a super high level. And so that was super lucky that I fell into that and was guided by some very, very, very good teachers and coaches. And I've had a few poor coaches and teachers, but I've had many, many more really good teachers. In fact, so good that I wanted to become a teacher and did, and have become a teacher myself, because I saw the value of these kinds of people, and so I wanted to become valuable myself in that way to others.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I was able to be exposed to really good teaching at a very high level, and really high competition at that same high level. And that's a it's rare to be able to get to do that. And I recognize and I'm grateful for how rare those situations come together, and how infrequently somebody gets to do that. And I got to do that. And that's another reason why I want to tell people the few things that I know. I have a little tiny bit of wisdom, a little bit, and I want to give that to people.
Yeah.
And so that's the history, and anybody can look up. It's a well documented history. I was in a couple things that I did that were interesting, I suppose. I competed in more than one weight class every year, up to five: 220, 242, 275, 308, and super heavy. And then I would also come back down. So I would gain weight up and then come back down. And so the discipline of a diet, either to gain weight or lose weight, is something that's also fairly unique, that I had done and was proficient at. I was top five in the world in five different weight classes. So that's interesting. And so that speaks to the knowledge, the education that I had of how to do that.
Yeah.
That takes some know-how, not just some heart and drive and discipline, and it takes some know-how to be able to do that. And so that's one interesting thing, I suppose. And then the other interesting thing is that I got to the world class level and wasn't winning. I was coming in third. And I looked around, and I was going to school at the time at Ohio State University to learn exercise physiology at the PhD level. So I was being taught by really smart people, all the best training, all the best, the cutting edge of knowledge about physical training. And I was applying it all the time. And I looked around and I was getting beat. And I said, I know how to train better than these people who are beating me. Is it that they're genetically better, or do they try harder? Who tries harder than me? Am I not trying hard enough? And I'm like, no, I try just as hard as them, and they don't look like they have any gifts that I don't have.
Yeah.
And I actually should have the advantage here because I know way more than they know. They don't know a fraction of what I know about training. Why am I not winning? And so I really thought about that. And here's the interesting part is I came to the conclusion that I didn't know enough about the psychology of training, the psychology of competing. I didn't know enough about mental strength. That was my weak spot. Physical training was my forte.
Yeah.
But mental training, I was really deficient in. And that's when I took off on that track to really try to educate myself on the, I wouldn't say finer points, but just the basic tenets of mental fitness and strength. And that's kind of interesting because a lot of people will talk that game. A lot of people will tell you how important the mental side of the game is. And they will speak that to you, and they'll agree, and they'll nod their head and they'll say, yeah, oh, yeah, it's some people say 50% mental, 50% physical. Some people will go further and say it's 60% mental or 70% mental. The game is 70% mental. And then you ask them, out of all your training, energy, and time, how much do you spend on the mental training? Drills, exercises, practice, time, not doing something and then trying to have a positive attitude about it, not being in a gym lifting weights, doing physical training, trying to think positive thoughts, actually sitting down and doing something that strengthens your mind just the same way you do sets and reps to strengthen your body.
Yeah.
And the answer is none. They don't do any. They just told you how important, how vitally important the mental side of their sport is, and how the headspace is super important. And then you ask them, well, if it's so important, how much time do you devote to that? And if it was important, that would be a high number, and it's an exceedingly low number. It's always nothing. And then they try to backtrack and say, well, we try to keep a positive attitude around here, and we're real encouraging, and that's not training. Those are good things. I'm all for cheerleading and encouraging and telling people that they can do it, and telling kids they have to have a positive attitude. You got to think, you got to believe you can do it. That's not training. That doesn't teach any kid how to believe in himself. Nothing. That doesn't move the needle at all up here. Yeah, coach, I know I have to believe in myself. I know I have to have more confidence. Teach me how to do that. And they can't because they know nothing about the mental side of training. And by the way, a lot is known about that. A whole bunch of sports psychologists and martial artists and Eastern thinkers and have been studying this and practicing it for a long time. And you can find out all kinds of ways to do that. And I uncovered them slowly. So that was the only other interesting thing I think about me is that, I was able to move up and down the weight classes. And I decided clearly to move in a direction to at least equal the mental strength with the physical strength. And then I've told you, I've already mentioned that there's a third component that I discovered in that process. And we could talk about that if you want. I think that's kind of important. But um, uh, and I plan on talking about this more and more in the future.
Yeah.
So if you want to, we could go in that direction where there's the physical training that's pretty well known. There's lots of sets and reps and programs, and people love to talk about exercises and technique, and that's fine and that's necessary because we have to do it with our bodies ultimately. But And there's plenty known about mental training, about things that you do in your head to make your headspace stronger in competition. And that those things are known, but not much is known, or not much is talked about in this third dimension of emotional strength.
Yeah.
And how in the world does somebody become emotionally strong? We meet people and we can tell right away that they're emotionally strong or emotionally weak. It doesn't take long. It takes a little bit of stress to find out if somebody's not emotionally strong.
Yeah.
A little bit of stress,
Yeah.
and you can find that out. And so I've been spending quite a bit of time thinking about and beginning to talk about ways in which it's what I know the least about. I know a ton about physical training. I know a good deal about mental training. I know a little bit about this emotional strengthening, but I believe it's important. And it's something that I'm interested in. And so if you want to talk about that, we can. If you want to talk about anything else, we can too. But that's enough about where I am and how I got here.
Yeah, definitely. No, thanks a lot for sharing that. I know that, there was a lot of interesting bits in that, and there was kind of two follow-up questions from there. And the first one is, I know obviously you mentioned in terms of the level that you've competed at, and as well as your education, who has been your biggest influences in terms of the mental side of training, but also the your education and competing as well. And then the second part of that is, you've mentioned there about, not a lot of people, a lot of people will think about, that positive attitude and, just try and do the right thing. What are the sort of successful attributes that, competitors or, people in general have shown that they have that that strong mental strength, if you like? Because you've said there, applying a little bit of stress, you can find out, what level they're at. So I know that was kind of a two different questions
Let me
there, but
just there's many things we could attack there, but let me address the which one do I want to pick? Um, which part of that would you like me to spend the most time on? What's most important to you out of that
yeah,
group
I,
of
I
things?
think that I think that the topics
I
that
mean,
I had
you
by was,
personally. I want
yeah,
to answer this question for you. I want you to say, J.M. Blakley, I personally will get a lot out of knowing this.
I think the successful attributes
Okay.
would be good.
One really successful attribute of people who can achieve almost anything with their mind is the ability to not be bored by the simplest of things. Now let's dissect that. So some of the most intelligent, I got that from a really intelligent person. They said the quote is something along the lines of, if a person can not become bored with the simplest of things, that person can accomplish anything. Something I butchered that enough, but the concept comes through.
Yeah,
It means that if you have a mind that is strong enough to not say, I'm done with this thing, I know everything there is to know about it, and now it bores me. That's a weaker mind than a mind that says, what else can I learn about this? Here's this thing. I know a lot about it. I've been with it for a while, but I'm not bored yet. I'm gonna investigate this thing further and further and further. And that mind can accomplish anything, because they're not going to become bored, disinterested, distracted. That is the kind of mind, you said an attribute. So these kinds of minds that can resist boredom, or another way to put that, these kinds of minds that they don't have to resist boredom. Boredom doesn't appear to them because they're always asking, what else is there to know about this? And they are never saying, never, I know enough about that. I know all I need to know about that. I know a good deal about it, and I don't want to know anymore. Those people can accomplish some things, but not as much as the mind that can keep asking the next question. And there's always another question. There's always another question. And there really is always another question. And if I learn and in pursuing the little bit of metaphysical studies that I have, I've decided that questions are more important than answers. Because when you have the answer, you stop growing. You stop asking the next question. As if you were looking for your keys for your car in your house. You had lost them. And you find them in the cushions of the couch. You don't go open up a few more drawers to see if they're in there. You're done looking. You're done with this search. It stops. It ends. It is over. When you believe you have the answers and you know enough, you don't grow anymore at all. That's where you're done. You really are done. You really are done. But the mind that can say, what's the next question? What else can we know about this? And it can interest itself deeper and deeper and deeper before finally saying, okay, there's nothing else to know. That's never true. But perhaps you're saying, I choose to stop growing in this direction. Right. But a really healthy mind that is strong, it has an attribute of not getting sidetracked, of not setting a goal and not achieving that goal, of growing disinterested with that goal, of being distracted with other more shiny goals. That's the mind that can continue to ask a question and never says or rarely says or resists temptation to say, that's all I want to know about that. Now, certain things I don't want to know any more about. So the more important a thing is to you, the more you should apply this, what's the next question business. If something isn't quite so important to you, you might want to end that quest for knowledge about it. Right. And so, but the things that we care about most are personal goals. If you want development in an area, any area, then you have to then it serves you to have that kind of a mind that doesn't say, I know enough about it. Have you heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect?
I have heard of it. Yeah, I'm not fully. Can't fully remember what it is.
Been around for a long time, but it's super popular right now because people are. I don't know for what reason it's caught on finally.
Right.
But what it means is that people tend to think that they know more about a thing than they actually do. They tend to believe that they understand more than they do understand about it. And those people are usually of a weaker mind. Stronger minds tend to do the opposite. They tend to think, boy, I don't know enough about this. I need to find more out about this. So if you want to see if you're what level of your intelligence you're using, a lower version of it or a higher version of it, ask yourself, how many times do I say, I know enough about that? And how many times do you say, I'd like to learn more about that? Because more intelligent people that are using more of their intelligence, they feel that they don't know enough about something. And they're the experts in the field. And they're still driving themselves further. Their minds have not been bored. They know they're the top nines in that field, and they want to know more and more and more. And then the rest of us, sometimes we think we're experts at stuff because we know a little bit about it, and we overestimate the amount and quality of what we know. And that leads to disaster, oftentimes. So the Dunning-Kruger effect is the guy who believes himself an expert, and you can see he really doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
But he thinks he's got it all down.
Yeah.
And those people have more disasters than other people. And we're all on that continuum somewhere. But you want to push yourself towards this mentally. I want to know more, but not about everything.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in how they make chewing gum. I'm not. I'm not. But I am interested in how to train dogs, because I have some German Shepherds, and I'm interested in that. And I don't think my dogs are trained by any stretch of the imagination. They know some things, and they're pretty good. And people say, "Oh, your dogs are really well trained," but I have seen really well trained dogs, and I know that there's more to know.
Mm.
And when my shepherds obey my commands, people are like, "Oh boy." I'm like, "No, that's my dogs have a long way to go." More wanting to go further in that thing, not being bored with it, not giving up on it, not shutting it down, not having this, and certainly not mistakenly believing that we know more than we do. And this is easy. This is super easy to demonstrate with people. When I was taught it years ago, the question was, and they did studies on this because I was taught it in school.
Yeah.
And they showed us the studies. They said, have a person draw on paper a bicycle, a working bicycle with all the important parts. And you should see what people draw. All right, now you're thinking, I know how a bicycle works. I know how that works. And people draw stuff where the chain's not even connected to the pedals, and things of that nature, or they don't even draw a chain. There's just pedals and wheels.
Yeah.
And the belief that we know how something works when we know how to work it is the mistake we make. So I know how to drive a car. I know how to work my car really well. I've never been in an accident. I can drive it very proficiently. I know how to work it. And I know a little bit about the internal combustion engine and fuel injection, but I don't know how it works.
Yeah.
I don't. And here's a question. If you ask someone how a toilet works, a commode, how does the water go from up here down into the bowl and wash your shit away without overflowing the bowl? Ask them just to do that. You can see if you know how to do it. And if you don't know how a commode works or how a toilet works, it's hard when you start thinking it through. The water's up here, and I know the water goes down into the bowl, and there's no motors, nothing is, and they're like, well, it gets sucked out, it does this. Well, how does that work? How does that happen? How does suction appear out of nowhere when water? Why doesn't the water come out of the back and then overflow your shit onto your floor? And it goes down the hole. What makes it go down the hole? How does that work? And all of a sudden, people don't know how a toilet works, but they do know how to work it.
Yeah.
They know how to work it. And so when we know how to work something, and by the way, of those two things, knowing either how it works or how to work it, one is much more practical.
Yeah.
Knowing how to work it isn't as important as knowing how stuff works. But if we want to really, really understand what's going on around us, then we have to understand how things work, not just how to work them. And this Dunning-Kruger effect sets in, and we think we know how it works. We attribute our knowledge to not just knowing how to work it, but we think we know how it works.
Yeah.
We think, oh, now how I know how this works. Oh, do you? Well, explain it to me.
Yeah.
And that's where things go wrong. So you asked me for a specific attribute.
Mm-hmm.
And so developing that, and I'll give you two ways to develop that. So there's the attribute. That's just one. That's the first one I thought of. All right. And that quote is by David Foster Wallace. I forget where he said it in, but he said it many, many times. Having a mind that doesn't just get bored with stuff.
Yeah.
And so, in my opinion, then, ways to develop that kind of an attribute in yourself. One, curiosity. Absolutely always feed your curiosity, your sense of wonder. I wonder how, I wonder what, I wonder who, I wonder. So if you can feed your curiosity, and they beat it out of us, because they don't want us being curious. They want us just to follow directions, give the right answer on the test. Here's what I'm going to ask you on the test. Here's the answer. When I ask you, you give it to me, and I'll give you an A. And now you're real intelligent, right? Not so much. Not so much. So curiosity is in rare supply, is in low supply these days.
Mm-hmm.
And so you need to feed that. You need to ask questions. You need to ask the next question, right? Right. You need to keep going with what's next, right? And so if you're curious, though, if you're genuinely curious, and if you feed that child, not childish, but childlike sense of wonderment, like I wonder what's behind that curtain.
Yeah.
I wonder what's back there. You know,
Yeah.
they beat it out of us. They tell us just to accept things the way they are. And there's wisdom in that too sometimes when you can't change something. But if you want to understand why things are the way they are, you have to have some curiosity about that.
Mm-hmm.
You have to pull back that curtain and see what's behind the curtain.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it's disappointing.
Yeah.
And that sort of that can reinforce our killing off of it in ourselves. I don't want to look because I don't want to be disappointed again.
Yeah.
But I'm saying do the opposite. Pull the curtain back, see what happens.
Yeah.
You know, find out, be curious, be more curious, feed your curiosity. Ask why, ask how, ask what's the next thing I can ask about this. And then the other way to get into this this mindset of not being bored is to feed your creativity.
Yeah.
Do creative things, make stuff. Those two things, I think, curiosity and creativity together, if we can strengthen those, then many parts of our mind can be strengthened as well.
Yeah.
In any direction we want to. Concentration, discipline, awareness, being able to think about this and not that, being able to broaden or sharpen our focus, pay attention to the whole basketball court, who's moving where, what's going on, pay attention just to the rim of the basket. And these are all practices that can be strengthened. But I think at to give you one answer that should suffice for a short form like this. I mean, people write books about this.
Yeah.
Is this this not getting bored, strengthening your curiosity and your creativity, and that will have repercussions in all of your mental activities and training.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah. And with that, a couple of things that you mentioned there, because like I say, you know, it was kind of the attributes and then ways to develop that as well. A couple of things that you've mentioned in terms of, like, you know, the curiosity and those sorts of things. is kind of the thought. A lot of people, even experts in the fields, can sometimes have that imposter syndrome. Is that something that comes down to maybe just confidence in their own mental strength attributes? And then also you touched on sort of like the goal setting and not getting bored. How does kind of goal setting and discipline and sometimes feeling uncomfortable in terms of trying to find the answer and keeping developing, how do they all play a part together, if both of those make sense?
You got to ask me a specific question if you want a specific answer.
So
Take what you told me and then throw me a bone, and I'll bite down on that bone.
yeah.
Go ahead.
So with the wanting that knowledge and that curiosity, do you think that sometimes the people can struggle with imposter syndrome?
Be more. I'm not as familiar. I've heard that term,
Yeah.
and I can imagine what it might mean, but I don't know what it means. Tell me what it means.
Yeah. So with that is, if you're curious, finding knowledge, but then there might be giving that information to people, to clients, to athletes, but then feeling as though they could always give more, if that makes sense.
Well, we always can.
Yeah.
So what? I'm not familiar with the imposter syndrome. So,
Okay.
but dealing with just that,
Yeah.
dealing with feeling like we're not enough, dealing with feeling like we should be more. Maybe is that something like?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So when we're helping someone, when we're coaching somebody, uh, never. Here's a good rule.
Yeah.
Never make something up.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know. So I didn't know what imposter syndrome
Yeah.
was. I could have continued this conversation perhaps, but I stopped and I told you I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about that. So one thing to resist, I think, if I'm understanding what it is that
Yeah.
you're asking clearly, one thing that's really, really a strong move is that when you don't know something, to tell people you don't know it.
Mm-hmm.
Straight out. Just say, I don't know. What should I do here, JM? I'm having trouble with this. I don't know. I don't know in that case. Let me think about it. Let me read some things about it, and I'll try to come back to you. Perhaps you can do the same, and we'll both learn something, maybe.
Yeah.
But I don't know. And oftentimes, in an effort to preserve the coach athlete relationship in a hierarchy instead of a teamwork, the coach will make something up that sounds about right. And I've been witness to this quite a bit. I've heard personal trainers and coaches talking in circles in the gym, trying to explain something to the athlete. And here's the thing that's going on there. And it's actually cruel to your athlete to not tell him, hey, I don't know. I don't know about that. I have to learn more about that. I'm gonna have to explore that. I don't have a good answer for you right now, but I'll do better. That's a good question. They'll start to obfuscate. They'll try to hide their lack of knowledge. They'll try to not let you know. They'll be an imposter. Or they'll pretend to know it, and then it's cruel to the athlete because then they use words in circles that confuse the athlete on purpose. They're doing it on purpose to make the athlete feel dumb. And then they're like, okay, so you see? And the athlete's like, uh-huh, yeah. And they don't see.
Yeah.
And they're made to feel dumb when neither of them know. They're equal. They both don't know. But the coach creates this I'm the coach and I know all the shit. I know it. I
Yeah.
know everything. And I'm not about to admit that I don't know something. And so I'll make up some bull crap,
Yeah.
some nonsense, some gibberish that sort of talks around it. It's sort of kind of it has sort of, but it doesn't explain it
Yeah.
at all. And it's actually cruel because it makes the other person feel like they're a dummy.
Yeah.
No, I don't understand what the hell you're talking about. And I don't want to admit that I can't follow you
Yeah.
because that makes me feel bad. And so they just go, uh-huh. And that doesn't help either. That doesn't help the coach win with the team, and it doesn't help the athletes achieve.
Is that is
So
that where is that where sorry, when you mentioned there about how a car works, know how to use it but don't understand how it works, is that where that misconnection happens and they're just saying things to, like what you say, to have that hierarchy of
maybe,
coaching
yeah.
client?
A lot of times that can happen. But if the coach knows how to get the best out of the athletes, but don't know how to do it, how they're doing it, it's not repeatable. If it's repeatable and it sort of just happens, then they don't really have to know how. They just have to be able to continue to do it every time.
Mhm.
But the best way to make something repeatable is to know how you're doing it. So I tell my athletes when they have a situation, I'm like, and they solve it, right? They do poorly, then they do better the next set. And I'll say, you don't have to know how you did that or why that happened or what you're doing wrong. What you have to be able to do is always be able to fix it. So when you start to lose confidence in yourself and hold back, you don't have to explore. I'm curious, so I'd like to know why. Why am I holding back on myself? But you don't have to explore that if you know how to stop it. Cut it out. Stop holding back on yourself and cope with it and fix the situation and get yourself back to performing right. You don't necessarily have to know the nuts and bolts if you can always do that. But it stands to reason that if you do understand the nuts and bolts, it's more repeatable because you know how you're doing it and you know where to go to look for the levers that you need to pull. But if you just know that this feels right and I can do it, you can do it again and again and again. You don't necessarily have to know why you started holding back on yourself. And you don't have to kick yourself for why do I always do that to myself? Why do I always take to the third set before I really turn it on? I don't know. You don't know, but you turn it on and we get to where we have to go. So you do know how to fix it, but you don't know what you know.
Yeah.
And sometimes we don't know. There's a lot that goes on in my head and I don't know how it works, but I try to understand more of it. So I don't know if that was exactly what you wanted and
No,
what you were getting at.
yeah,
But
I think it highlighted a couple of good points that I was thinking, really. Yeah.
yeah, so when you have an athlete, it is good I think it's very good to know uh, and I teach a lot of things to my athletes.
Hmm.
But a kid hitting a baseball, he doesn't have to know the mechanics of keeping his elbow up and pulling his hips through and shifting his weight and then breaking his wrist. He doesn't have to know that. He doesn't have to. What he does have to know, he has to know what swing feels right and what swing feels wrong. And when he's feeling something wrong, he has to move away from that feeling towards a more right feeling. And when he's feeling something right, he needs to chase that feeling. And so you don't have to teach. I teach a lot of mechanics in the bench press because I think it helps.
Yeah.
But some people don't want to know that much about it, and they don't have to. But they do know how. They have to know this. They have to know when they do it wrong. They don't have to know what they did wrong. They have to notice right away that something felt wrong.
Hmm.
They don't have to know what it is, but they have to move away from that wrong feeling, and they have to remember what felt right, and then they have to move towards that feeling. So an athlete doesn't necessarily need to be taught every little thing about this and to know how it works, but they do have to know this feeling of being able to have awareness of, boy, that didn't feel right, and I know what feels right, and I got to do that. Now, if you know what's happening, then it's easier to make it feel right.
Mm-hmm.
And my athletes will tell me my elbows flared, or I lost my arch, I caved in, or they know what when they feel something wrong, they can usually tell me what felt wrong. They don't go, I don't know what went wrong.
Yeah.
They usually go, oh, I know exactly what I did. And they do.
Yeah.
And I think that's helpful, but they don't need to know that necessarily if they are able to consistently fix it. And some athletes can.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I don't trust them. I want to teach them. I worry that they're going to forget, or they're going to, because they don't really know how they're doing it. And I'm less trusting of that than teaching them what they should be doing, letting them concentrate on fixing it. But that can be overwhelming for some people, and it doesn't work with all athletes. And so again, I teach awareness and feel.
Yeah.
The whole time I'm teaching mechanics and leverage and angles and forces, I'm also teaching feel. I make people feel what they should be feeling. Here's one of my techniques to do that. So I'll offer this in that. I'll have them do a set of 6, and they will videotape. If I'm there, we can talk about it. But if they're training by themselves, they're to video it on their phone. And so they'll do a set of 6, and the first thing they do when they get up, excuse me, I have to burp, is they'll sit on the end of the bench and close their eyes, and they will pick out among those 6 reps, pardon me, the best rep. Which was the good one? One of them felt better than the rest because they're feeling it. And so by feel, which one felt the best? And they replay that one in their mind, and then they get up and they walk over their phone and they watch it. And they connect what they see to what they felt.
Yeah.
And by practicing that, by practicing feeling it first and then watching it, they can learn. You can do some good self-coaching that way if you know what you're trying to look for. But you got to teach them what they should be looking for, right?
Yeah.
What was the best rep? What did that look like? And then why was that one better?
Yeah.
What was different about the ones that weren't so good? And then we never, ever, ever, this is important. We're talking about mental things, coaching,
Mm-hmm.
and that. But this is super important. We never, ever, ever pick a bad one and figure out what went wrong there. That's not necessary.
Yeah.
We never focus on the negative. Now, when I'm with an athlete, I can do that. I can point out something they did horribly, and then we can address it. But when they're doing this themselves, they always pick out the best rep, and they hold on to the positive, and they forget about the shitty reps. They hold on to the thing they did well, and they take that over and they look at what that looked like, and then they take that doing good and try to outdo it on the next set. Don't gravitate towards the thing you're doing wrong.
Yeah.
And so this brings up another. So that's one thing that I do to address that knowing and feeling together.
Mm-hmm.
Teach both, right? But this brings up an interesting point that I feel like talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And that is that a lot of people, a lot of coaches will say, and this is their method, they say we got to work on our weaknesses. Got to focus on a weakness. Bring it up. And that sounds like it's a good idea at first. But then if you think about it a little longer, I have an athlete, a wrestler, and he's really, really bad at single leg escape or whatever. You're not going to beat the guy on the mat with your weakness. You're going to beat him with your strength.
Yeah.
You play to your strength, right? And so this constantly focusing on the weakness. We got to work on your escape. We got to work on this. We got to work on that. And not focusing on improving the things you're already pretty good at, that are the things that are going to make you win. You're not even going to do those things that you're shitty at. You're going to try to stay as far away from those in the match as you can.
Yeah.
And you're going to try to win with the things you're good at. So if you spend all your practice time working on your weak spots, that's a mistake. That don't focus all your time on the negative. Look at that thing you're doing really well. You're doing good at that.
Yeah.
Now go and outdo that. Do it better. Do it better. Do it better. Better. There was an MMA fighter, a female, and I don't follow MMA, but I know about her, Ronda Rousey, and
Yeah.
she beat everybody with one move. She had an armbar, a submission armbar, and she just beat, and everybody knew that that was her strength. But she was so good at it that even though they spent months figuring out how to avoid getting into an armbar and how to get out of it from her, she still beat them with it.
Yeah.
Because she worked on her strength and made it stronger and stronger and stronger. And she could basically say to people, I don't know if she ever did, but she could have, I'm going to beat you with an armbar. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do, and you can't stop me because I have worked on my strength. I have made my strength stronger and stronger and stronger. And so I think it's a big mistake to have kids always doing something that they're shitty at all the time in practice. Yeah, we got to work on those things. We do. But too many coaches spend too much time on the weak spots and not nearly enough time. And they say, well, he's doing that good already. We don't have to work on that. Really? He's doing that at what level good?
Mm-hmm.
Is he the best in the nation at it? I don't think so. We could still improve that too. And he likes doing that and he's good at it. And so he's going to work really hard at that. Whereas if you keep forcing his weak, you shove his weakness in his face every day. That's a hard way to practice for a kid.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can't ignore people's weaknesses. I'm not saying that. I hope that didn't come off like all I do is work on people's strength. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. But I know coaches that practically always work on the weak spots.
Yeah.
And they don't work on the strengths. And the strengths don't improve.
Yeah. I think that it was a good analogy of or a good phrase saying, you're gonna beat them with what you're good at. I thought Ronda Rousey was a good example. I follow a little bit of sort of MMA and UFC, and it's exactly right. She could have said, this is exactly what I'm going to do because, she was at a level where she could do that. One thing just on that, when we've spoken about curiosity and the repeatability of something, where does or how does discipline play a role in this? What's kind of your thoughts on that?
Okay. So discipline can play a role, and discipline plays more of a role for beginners and intermediates than it does for as you advance. So most people need a hell of a lot more discipline. And so it's especially the earlier on. And since most people are beginners and intermediates, and very few people stick with it long enough to get to high level, this applies for most people, that improving your discipline is important. And so let's just say that if I said that discipline is all you need, it would probably be true for many, many people until such time as it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
But what is better than discipline is desire. And this applies more to people that have been at it for a couple years and have had some progress, and they're stronger and they're better and they're more advanced in it. They want to do this.
Yeah.
They've stuck with this. And the difference between discipline and desire is that discipline says, I'm going to make myself do this. And desire says, I'm going to let myself do this. And those are different. Those are different things. I get to do this. I don't have to do it. I get to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Desire says, I get to do this. Discipline says, I have to do this. And what happens is there's a transfer. As your career goes by, you need to make, well, you don't need to. You don't need to. Because if the goal is to run 15 miles and you discipline yourself to do it, and you hate every step, but you do it. But I love running, and so I can't wait to run it. We'll both run our 15 miles, right? So it's not like you have to change over from discipline to desire. But if you want the experience to be different, it can be. And it can be very, very, very radically different. When you use desire to fuel your training, you can't wait to get to the gym. When you use discipline, you also do your sets and your reps, but you have a different experience.
Yeah.
It feels different to you. The way you go through it, the way you endure it if you're disciplining yourself. You enjoy it if you're desiring to be there. And so of the two of them, one is far more powerful and will carry you further. Now, that doesn't matter at the beginning and in the middle. But it might matter when things really get tough. And you're at a higher level now.
Yeah.
And it costs more. And it's harder to train.
Yeah.
And you might need more desire then than discipline.
Yeah.
And I think that is absolutely true. And so where curiosity comes in then is you end up saying, I wonder if I can do that. That's exactly what happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
I benched a certain number and I thought I was like, okay, that's good. And then I benched more than anybody in my state. And I'm like, that's definitely good. And then I'm like, I wonder how far I could go with this. I wonder how far I could go. Well, maybe I could set a national record. And then I wonder if I could set a world record. And I wonder how much after set, I wonder how much I could possibly lift. What's the top end? When does this quit? When am I not going to be able? I wonder where that is.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where curiosity, you don't even need discipline then, because you want to find out.
Yeah.
You want to find out what you're made of. You want to find out if you have what it takes to lift 400, 500, 600. You want to find out. You don't need discipline for that. You don't have to make yourself do that. Nobody's making you do shit. You don't have to be here, right? I saw and a documentary about some United States Marine sniper expeditionary guys, and they're going through their training, and they're at the end of their training, and they've done all their qualifying, and they're super good shots, or they wouldn't be there. And they have to do this one run because one time in Vietnam, one sniper and his buddy, one guy got killed, and the one guy put him on his back and ran him like, I don't know, 15 miles, carried him on his back home.
Yeah.
And so this run is named after him.
Right.
And what these guys have to do, and they've been through all kinds of hell. And what they have to do is they have to traverse the 15 miles with one or the other of them carrying. So only one pair of boots on the ground at a time. They can switch off as often as they want, but they have to trade off and off. And in this video, they come to this last group. Now these guys are already they're already the ones that made it. This is the last thing they have to do. And everybody wants them to make, like, their instructors want, no one's trying to weed them out now.
Yeah.
Everybody wants these guys to make it. And these two guys are lagging behind. And they're both vomiting, and they're both they're both standing there bent over vomiting. And the instructor comes up and he said, one of you got 3 seconds, and one of you has to be off the ground, carrying the other and moving forward. And he goes on. He says, because if you don't want to do this, you don't have to. You can go home. You wanted to be here. You wanted to be a Marine recon sniper. We got a whole bunch of them. You can leave. You don't have to finish this run. You don't have to be here. You're here by choice. And that's the difference between discipline and desire.
Yeah.
Those guys, and they finished the course. It was, but it was brutal, right? It was hard. But they didn't use desire. They didn't use discipline. They wanted to be a sniper so bad that they did what they had to do. They didn't make themselves do it.
Yeah.
Now they did, right? But they didn't. Their desire was overwhelmingly the motivating force. Yeah. And at this point, they had satisfied their curiosity. They could make it. All they had to do was finish this one run. And they did, right? But I remember that phrase from that instructor. And he said it's just like he didn't care. And he did, right? He did want them to finish. But he's like, we don't need you. You don't need to be here. You don't have to do this. But if you want to be a recon sniper, one of you got to get up and carry the other one. Yeah. This has to happen.
Yeah.
Or you're done. You're out. And so thinking about that, when you're in the gym and it's hard and you have to do something difficult and you're thinking about making yourself do it, remember that. I don't have to. I don't have to be here.
Yeah.
I don't have to be strong. I don't have to bench press 500 pounds. Nobody has to. It's unnecessary. It's unnecessary. It should all be desire at this point. Yeah. And that's at the higher level, right? So, at the beginning level, this is different.
Mm-hmm.
But there should be a transfer between a reliance on discipline to reliance on desire.
Yeah.
And a curiosity at the end to see how far can I go? Yeah. What's my potential? If you don't want to find out, you don't have to. You don't have to be here, right? I really love that phrase. I think about it a lot, right? And I say it a lot. I said it this morning to my client. I'm like, you don't have to do this. And they're like, yes, I do. And I'm like, no, you don't. I'm not making you do it. I'm not going to make you do it. If it were up to me, it'd already be done. This had nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
You want to do it, you do it.
Yeah.
If you don't want to do it, I'll be sad for you because you say you want to do it. And here's what we ended up with. Sometimes we say we want things, deep down we really don't want them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's important. And so knowing your desires and feeding that desire, feeding the fire of desire. Now we're probably a little far off with this, but this concept of where does discipline, curiosity, and desire come in? They're all part of it. Yeah. They are, and they all have a part to play that's pretty focal and central in each of the stages of development. But I think that if you can start thinking about using and feeding your desire more and more, you won't have to apply much discipline.
Yeah.
It won't be as necessary.
Yeah. I usually the last question that, and I'll still ask it, but from the things that you mentioned there, it kind of recapped and connected a couple of things that we'd mentioned about and spoken about today. But the last question that I like to ask, and I don't know how we can build it on from what you've said there, is from everything that we've chatted about in terms of developing that mental strength is for everyone listening, what would be your take home points or words of wisdom from what we've chatted about today?
The importance of wanting to know more, the importance of curiosity, the importance of creativity, the importance of desire. Those are important things, and they mean a little bit different. They mean something different to all of us. But in general, I'm talking about the basic garden variety definitions of those things. Those are powerful concepts and tools. And they if you feed your curiosity, you build your curiosity, you build your desire, you feed your desire, right? All those things are things that can be improved. So I think those 4 things are super important, and I think they can all be improved. We're not stuck with anything. Things are. So you asked me what attribute. Remember that first question you asked me about an attribute. So well, like discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Discipline can be trained. It's not an attribute. It's not a trait. It's a skill.
Mm-hmm.
It's a skill. Some people learn how to discipline themselves. They start out not knowing how to, and then they learn how to. I did. I didn't know how to discipline myself, and I learned how to. It wasn't a trait. It wasn't a thing that I had or didn't have. And I hear this, and it makes me just, I disagree with it strongly.
Yeah.
They'll say something like guts. You either have it or you don't. Bullshit. Bullshit. You have it or you don't. What a cop out for coaches and athletes alike. Well, I just don't have it, so I don't have to try anymore. Bullshit. Keep trying.
Yeah.
Learn it. You can get it. You can get guts. You can get discipline. You can. So I really dislike it when coaches and athletes say that. Well, you got it or you don't. Either have it or you don't. Either want it or you don't. No, you can feed your desire and want it more and more and more. Well, whoever wants it the most. No, you can want it more than you want it today. You can teach yourself how to do these things, and you can feed it or you can starve it. Any one of these qualities. We're not stuck where we are in and with the tools that we have. These are things, what you're stuck with? Your height. You are stuck with your genetics, but nobody knows what their genetics can be until they expend it.
Yeah.
And just because you try something and fail once, does that mean you can't do it? Well, I don't have the genetics to bench 500 pounds. How do you know? Well, because I tried once and I couldn't. That doesn't prove you don't have the genetics to do it.
Yeah.
What if you tried and failed twice? I did. I failed twice. I failed more than twice. But I did have the genetics to do it. But I could have said, I just don't have the genetics.
Yeah.
And those words have come out of my mouth before. That's another conversation. But I have about gaining weight. I just can't weigh over a certain amount. And that just wasn't true. My genetics won't let me get up to a certain weight. And I far exceeded that, what I was calling my genetic limit. So we're not stuck where we are. So that's my takeaway.
Yeah, definitely. I think there was, from everything that we've chatted about there, I think there's some practical takeaways and some food for thought in terms of, what people can ask themselves and think about how they can develop. Thanks a lot for taking the time to jump on today. Quite a lot of
You're welcome.
topics and tangents thrown in there, but for everyone listening who might have any questions about what we've chatted about today, see the content that you put out there, where could people find you or reach out to you?
I have an Instagram that I try to do something with pretty often. That's JM Blakley on the Instagram. I have a YouTube that I will do more or less with, which is JM, the number 7, THLEVEL. And the J and the M are capitalized, the numeral 7, and then lowercase THLEVEL, JM 7th level. And you can message me on either of those things. And my Instagram is linked to my Facebook. So those are on there.
Yeah. Nice.
And I do training through this medium too.
Yeah.
And I coach people over the internet. So that's something that I offer.
Yeah, nice. Well, thanks a lot for taking the time to jump on. Like I say, I
You're
really
welcome.
enjoyed chatting with you today. I think there was some really, like I say, interesting topics there,
I think so.
and some practical takeaways for people. So, thanks again. Thanks a lot to everyone listening, and I will see you all next week.